Emily, 25 years old, with soft brown hair and eyes that seemed to carry the light of the sky, stepped into the small Sunset Diner just as she did every morning. To her, this diner wasn't merely a place to earn a living. It was a lifeline, a way to care for her grandmother, her only remaining family after her mother passed away from illness. Despite the challenges life had thrown her way, Emily always greeted the world with a gentle smile, hoping to bring a touch of warmth to every customer she served. But this morning, the air inside the diner was heavy with tension. A middle-aged man walked in, wearing a bright red hat with the bold words, "America First," embroidered across the front. The bell above the door chimed sharply, cutting through the low hum of chatter, and suddenly, the entire diner seemed to freeze. Curious and disdainful glances followed him as he made his way to a table. Some customers whispered to one another, while others discreetly pulled out their phones to record. No one approached to take his order. No one dared to get close, as if that hat was a symbol of division that no one wanted to confront. Emily felt the weight of the tension in the room pressing down on her. Her chest tightened, but her resolve remained firm. She knew that what she was about to do would likely displease many, but deep within her, a quiet voice insisted, "Kindness is never a mistake." Taking a deep breath and clutching her order pad, she stepped forward. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Sunset Diner," she said, her voice calm and warm, like a breeze cutting through the stifling atmosphere. "What can I get you to drink?" The man looked up, his eyes weary, but holding a faint flicker of gratitude. "Just a coffee, please," he replied, his voice low and raspy. Emily smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile she hoped could dissolve some of the tension in the room. As she poured his coffee, she spoke softly. "You look like you've had a long day. Been traveling far?" The man nodded slightly. "Yes, it's been a long one. Thank you for asking." From the kitchen, Mr. Benson, the owner, glared through the small service window, his face tightening with annoyance. Around the diner, the whispers grew louder. Sarah, another waitress standing by the counter, shook her head in disbelief. "Emily doesn't know what she's doing," she muttered under her breath. "Mr. Benson is going to lose it." Emily could hear every whispered word, feel every judgmental stare directed her way. But she refused to let it shake her resolve. Setting the cup of coffee gently on the table, she spoke again, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. "Everyone needs a little kindness to get through a long day, don't you think?" The man looked up, his eyes now glistening with emotion. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're very kind." Those few words, though unadorned, were like a small beam of light piercing through the heaviness surrounding Emily. She didn't know then that this single act of humanity would set in motion events that would change her life forever. In that moment, she only knew she was doing the right thing. As the morning wore on, the tension in the diner thickened. The whispers between customers and staff grew louder, like kindling feeding a fire. A few customers began filming Emily's interaction with the man in the red hat. Their eyes were filled with judgment, their words sharp as daggers cutting into the air. An elderly customer at a nearby table shook her head and leaned toward her companion, speaking just loud enough for others to hear. What on earth is she thinking serving someone like that? Unbelievable. Emily felt the weight of judgment pressing heavily on her shoulders, but she refused to let it stop her. With quiet determination, she continued her work, offering a gentle smile each time she returned to the man's table. She knew people were scrutinizing her every move, but deep down, she clung to one truth. She was doing the right thing, showing kindness to a person, not a political statement. But from the kitchen, Mr. Benson, the owner of the diner, had seen enough. His face flushed red with anger as his heavy footsteps echoed through the room. He stormed out, making the entire diner fall silent. Every head turned to him, bracing for what was sure to be an explosive confrontation. "Emily!" Benson's voice boomed, loud enough to make the silverware on nearby tables rattle. Emily turned toward him, her serving tray still clutched in her hands. "Yes, sir?" she asked, her tone calm but tinged with unease. What exactly do you think you're doing? Benson roared, his furious gaze fixed on the man sitting quietly at his table. Do you have any idea how much trouble this is causing? Look around. Half the diner is recording this. Do you want Sunset Diner to go viral for the wrong reasons? Emily could feel the eyes of the customers boring into her, their attention now fully focused on the escalating scene. But she stood her ground. Taking a steadying breath, she replied, her voice calm and measured. Sir, I'm just doing my job. He's a customer, and I believe anyone who walks through our doors deserves to be treated equally. Benson let out a cold, humorless laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. Have you even thought about the consequences? What if people post this online and the diner gets boycotted? Who's going to take responsibility for that? You. Some customers began nodding in agreement, while others murmured among themselves. Yet Emily refused to be intimidated. She tightened her grip on the tray, her voice growing firmer. With all due respect, sir, I don't think showing kindness to someone is a reason for the diner to be boycotted. If people take issue with that, it's not because of me. Her words hung in the air, cutting through the tense silence. A few customers exchanged surprised glances, while some employees averted their eyes. The man in the red hat, who had remained quiet throughout the ordeal, looked up and gave Emily a small, appreciative nod, his eyes reflecting deep gratitude. But Benson wasn't backing down. I don't need you to lecture me on what's right or wrong, he snapped. I'm the owner here, and I'm telling you to stop serving that man. Let someone else handle it. The tension in the diner thickened like a storm cloud. Emily glanced around, noticing the awkwardness in her coworkers' faces and the expectant stares of the customers. She knew that her next decision would not only determine her job, but also test her integrity. Drawing a deep breath, she straightened her back, her hands tightening into fists by her sides as her voice rang out, unwavering. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't do that. Treating him differently just because people don't like his hat goes against everything I believe in. Her words reverberated through the room, clear and resolute, breaking through the oppressive tension like a lightning bolt. Benson stood frozen, his face turning an even deeper shade of red as anger radiated off him. Before he could fire back, a young customer suddenly rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the silence. She's right. What she's doing is the right thing. The murmurs in the diner began to shift. Some customers nodded in agreement, while others hesitated, caught between their own prejudices and the bravery they were witnessing. The atmosphere remained charged, but the tide was beginning to turn. Emily stood tall, her heart pounding but her resolve unwavering. She knew this moment was about more than a cup of coffee. It was about standing up for the values she held close to her heart, no matter the cost. Emily had no idea that this very moment marked a turning point in her life. A small yet courageous act that would lead her to places she had never dared to dream of. The next morning, Sunset Diner opened its doors as usual, but the atmosphere was heavier than ever. Emily stepped in, her familiar gentle smile gracing her face, though a quiet unease gnawed at her heart. The glances from her coworkers were fleeting and avoided, their greetings hurried and hollow. No one spoke openly, but she could feel the weight of whispers trailing her every move. She had become the unspoken topic of their cautious conversations. A sharp voice called out from the office, cutting through the muted tension like a knife. Emily, get in here now! For a moment, the diner seemed to freeze. Her co-workers cast her wary glances, their eyes a mix of concern and dread. Emily inhaled deeply, her hands clutching the edges of her apron for reassurance, before stepping into Benson's office. The door shut behind her, sealing her away from the eyes outside. Mr. Benson sat behind his desk, arms crossed, his face as cold as steel. Sit, he barked curtly. Emily complied, her hands resting neatly on her lap as she faced him, her gaze steady and unflinching. Emily, Benson began, his tone sharp and cutting through the air like a blade. Do you have any idea what your actions yesterday have caused? This diner is now the target of criticism all over social media because of that video. I've been flooded with angry emails and messages from customers, all because of you. Emily furrowed her brows, her heartbeat quickening. Sir, I was just doing my job. I don't believe showing kindness to a customer is a mistake. Benson shot to his feet, slamming his hand on the desk with a loud thud. Don't give me excuses. I told you to stop, but you didn't listen. I'm the owner here, and I don't need employees who can't follow orders. Emily kept her voice calm, but every word she spoke carried the weight of her convictions. With all due respect, sir, I didn't do anything wrong. I treated him as I would treat any other customer. If people want to criticize me for that, it's their choice. Her defiance made Benson's face flush even redder. Right or wrong doesn't matter. What matters is that I need an employee who listens to me. You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your things and leave. The word struck Emily like a dagger. Her heart sank, but she refused to let herself cry in front of him. Rising from her seat, she looked him straight in the eye, her voice trembling slightly, but brimming with dignity. If doing the right thing is the reason I'm being fired, then I have no regrets. Benson turned his face away, offering no response. Emily left the office, her steps heavy yet resolute. All eyes in the diner followed her as she made her way out. Some filled with pity, others merely silent. But Emily kept her head high, her outward composure masking the turmoil inside her. That evening, back in her small apartment, Emily sat by the window, the dim glow of streetlights filtering through the sheer curtains. She thought of her grandmother, the unpaid bills piling up, and the effort she had poured into Sunset Diner over the past 3 years. The weight of her loss pressed down on her, but deep within, she knew she had done the right thing. The shrill ring of her phone pulled her from her swirling thoughts. It was Mia, her best friend. Emily, are you okay? I just saw the video of you online. It's going viral, Mia said, her voice filled with concern. Emily sighed, her tone soft but laced with sadness. I'm fine, Mia. It's just, things feel a bit overwhelming right now. I never imagined it would turn into something this big. Mia hesitated for a moment before continuing. Emily, don't you see? The whole world is talking about you. They're calling you an inspiration. Even the man you served that day, he posted a video thanking you. Emily furrowed her brows, a mix of surprise and confusion flickering across her face. What? What did he do? Mia's voice grew more excited as she explained. He said you're someone special, and he's not going to let this end the way it did. You should watch his video. Grabbing her phone, Emily quickly found the video. The man was seated in a modest room, his eyes filled with emotion as he spoke. I want to thank Emily, the young woman who treated me as a person, not as a symbol. She didn't deserve to lose her job for her kindness, and I'm going to do something to change that. Emily set the phone down, her eyes brimming with tears. This time, they weren't tears of sorrow, but of hope. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she felt in her heart that her story was far from over. The next morning, Emily woke up after a restless night. She still couldn't fully grasp how, just hours ago, it felt like the world had turned against her. Yet now, a glimmer of hope was beginning to shine. Her phone had been flooded with hundreds of messages from strangers, words of encouragement, admiration, and personal stories about how her actions had inspired them. While their support buoyed her spirits, it couldn't completely erase her lingering unease. As the morning light streamed through her small window, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Emily hesitated, her heart pounding as she picked it up. Hello, this is Emily, she said cautiously. Good morning, Emily. My name is John Anderson. The voice on the other end said, deep and steady. I'm the man you served at the diner. Emily froze for a moment, caught between surprise and apprehension. Oh, yes. Hello, Mr. Anderson. How can I help you? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. John Anderson chuckled softly, his tone warm and reassuring. No, Emily. I'm the one who wants to help you. Your story has stayed with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. Your kindness and conviction moved me deeply. I believe that people like you deserve opportunities, not setbacks. Emily remained silent, overwhelmed by a rush of emotion as he continued. I'd like to meet with you, if you don't mind. There's something important I want to discuss. Something I believe could change your life. Would you be able to meet me at the Grand Oaks Hotel this afternoon? She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. Was this truly an opportunity or just a hollow gesture of sympathy? But as she thought about her current situation, the mounting bills, her grandmother who needed her, and her pride that had been so deeply tested, she knew she couldn't let this pass her by. Yes, I can meet you there, she replied, her voice shaky but filled with determination. That afternoon, Emily stepped into the Grand Oaks Hotel, her heart pounding against her chest. This was a place she had only ever dreamed of. Its grand lobby, adorned with sparkling chandeliers and impeccably dressed guests, made her feel smaller than ever. But she wouldn't let her nerves overwhelm her. Adjusting her simple yet neat blouse, she walked to the reception desk with quiet resolve. A courteous receptionist escorted her to a private meeting room where John Anderson was waiting. He was no longer wearing his signature red hat, but instead was dressed in a sharp suit. His face lit up with a calm, friendly smile as she entered. Emily, it's a pleasure to see you, he said, rising to shake her hand. Please, have a seat. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Emily sat down, placing her hands on her lap to steady herself. She couldn't stop wondering what he wanted from her. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Anderson. I'm curious to know what this meeting is about. John gave a small, warm smile, his voice low and thoughtful. Emily, the way you stood up for what you believed in that day, it moved me deeply. You treated me not as a political symbol, but as a human being. That kind of integrity is rare these days. Emily felt her eyes sting at his words but remained silent, letting him continue. I'm a businessman, he said. I've invested in real estate, hotels, and other ventures. But I rarely meet anyone who makes me stop and reflect on how I live and work. You did that, Emily. He paused, his eyes locking onto hers, serious yet sincere. So, I've made a big decision. I purchased the Sunset Diner this morning. Emily's eyes widened, disbelief and shock washing over her. You bought the diner? She stammered. John nodded. Yes, but I didn't buy it to own it. I bought it to give it to you. Emily, I want you to manage that diner. I believe you can turn it into a place that's not just about serving food, but about sharing the values you stood up for that day. Emily felt the world around her come to a halt. She struggled to process his words, her heart racing wildly. I don't know what to say, but I've never managed a diner before. I'm just a waitress, she said, her voice trembling. John smiled reassuringly, his tone kind but firm. You're so much more than that, Emily. You have heart, kindness, and a determination that's hard to find. Those are the qualities a true leader needs. I'll provide the funding, training, and everything you'll need. But I want the diner to reflect the values you stood up for. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, spilling over despite her effort to contain them. I don't even know how to thank you. This is beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of. John gently placed a hand on her shoulder. No thanks needed. You earned this opportunity with your courage. So, Emily, are you ready to take on the challenge? Emily looked him straight in the eye, her own gaze filled with trust and determination. She took a deep breath, and with her voice quivering, she replied, I'm ready. I'll do my very best. It wasn't an ordinary morning. Today, Emily would return to Sunset Diner. But this time, she wasn't coming back as a humble waitress. She was stepping in as the new manager, empowered to make meaningful changes. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nerves. Over and over she asked herself, "Can I really do this? Am I capable of turning this dream into reality?" But as doubt crept into her mind, images of her grandmother, John Anderson's encouraging words, and the unexpected outpouring of support from social media surfaced in her thoughts. She took a deep breath and reminded herself, "I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it for everyone who's ever been overlooked, anyone who's ever felt unseen." The familiar chime of the diner door rang as Emily stepped inside. This time, she walked in without hesitation or fear. Her head was held high, her shoulders squared, and her eyes shone with determination. The diner was the same as ever, the wooden tables, the warm glow of golden light, and the comforting aroma of pancakes wafting from the kitchen. But today, it all felt profoundly different. Emily made her way to the counter, where Jake and Sarah, her former co-workers, were standing. Their eyes widened with surprise and a hint of unease at the sight of her. Jake, visibly flustered, broke the silence. "Emily, what are you doing here?" She smiled softly, a smile filled with quiet confidence. "I've come back to do my job, but this time, I'll be doing it as the new manager." The diner fell silent for a few moments. The staff exchanged glances, some curious, others skeptical. Sarah averted her gaze, her face tinged with embarrassment, as if recalling the whispers she had taken part in just days ago. Before long, Emily called for a short staff meeting in the small back room of the diner. It was a space she once retreated to when she felt overwhelmed, but today, she stood before the team in a position of leadership. The room was filled with uncertainty, evident in the wary yet curious expressions of the staff. Emily knew she had to dispel the tension with honesty and authenticity. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice calm but carrying a powerful undercurrent of emotion. "I know some of you might be wondering why I'm here or whether I can handle this role. But let me be clear. I'm not here to make anyone's life harder. I'm here to help this diner become a place we can all be proud of." The unease in the room seemed to soften slightly, though hesitation lingered. Sarah, who had been part of the murmurs about Emily, timidly raised her hand and asked, "Emily, do you really believe we can change this place?" Emily met Sarah's gaze, her eyes glowing with conviction. "I don't just believe it. I know we can. But it's going to take effort from all of us. I understand that this place hasn't always been fair. There's been tension and there's been division, but I want us to rebuild it together. No more judgment, no more resentment, just mutual respect and teamwork." Her words felt like a refreshing breeze, cutting through the heavy atmosphere in the small room. Jake, who had always been Emily's closest co-worker, spoke up, breaking the lingering silence. "I think we should give Emily a chance. If she's brave enough to come back here, then the least we can do is try this with her." The room began to hum with murmurs of agreement, and a few smiles broke through the skepticism. Emily could see the subtle yet significant shift in their expressions, from doubt to cautious trust. She knew this was just the beginning, but it was a beginning filled with hope. Just then, the meeting room door swung open, and Mr. Benson stepped inside. All eyes turned to him immediately, and the room seemed to freeze. He was no longer the commanding owner of the diner, but now appeared as an aged man, his steps measured and his expression tinged with quiet shame. "Emily," he began, his voice raspy, stripped of its previous hostility. "I heard you've come back, and now as the manager?" Emily held her composure, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, Mr. Benson, I've returned, and I'm here to make changes." He was silent for a few moments, then let out a sigh, his tone lowering with what sounded like genuine remorse. "I was wrong about you. I failed to see your true value. And now I realize this diner needs you more than ever. I'm sorry for what I did." Emily looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. But instead of resentment, she offered him a warm smile, her voice calm yet filled with quiet emotion. "Thank you for saying that. But this isn't just about me. It's about the team and the community that believed in building a better future together. As Mr. Benson left, Emily turned back to her team, her heart filled with resolve. This was no longer the place that made her feel small or out of place. It was now the foundation on which she could rebuild, a space where everyone would be treated with kindness and respect. The days that followed at Sunset Diner were far from easy for Emily. She began with small yet meaningful changes, sprucing up the diner, enhancing the menu, and fostering a more positive work environment. Worn wooden tables were adorned with crisp white tablecloths, and the lighting was adjusted to create a cozier, more welcoming atmosphere. Emily also made a point of listening to each employee, organizing meetings to gather ideas and build a sense of unity. It wasn't just about improving the diner. It was about creating a team that believed in the same vision. Slowly but surely, the changes began to take root. Regular customers who had stopped coming due to the previously tense environment started returning. The diner, once steeped in conflict, began to echo with laughter and camaraderie. One morning, Mrs. Maggie, a longtime customer, stepped in, her eyes lighting up as she saw Emily behind the counter. "Emily, you've done it," Mrs. Maggie said, her voice brimming with emotion. "You've turned this place into somewhere we truly love." Emily simply smiled, her heart warmed by the simple yet heartfelt compliment. This wasn't just her dream anymore. It was the dream of an entire community. One evening, after the last customer had left, Emily sat alone in the diner, taking in the familiar yet transformed space. The walls were adorned with photos of community events, beaming customers, and joyous staff. The diner was no longer just a workplace. It had become a symbol of unity and kindness. As she reflected, the sound of the door opening drew her attention. John Anderson stepped in, wearing his signature red hat. He took a seat at one of the tables, his gaze sweeping the room with quiet satisfaction. "You've done what many thought was impossible, Emily," he said, his voice warm and steady. "But I have a feeling you're not stopping here." Emily smiled softly, her eyes glowing with unshakable belief. "You're right, Mr. Anderson. This is just the beginning. I want to expand Sunset Diner, to bring this spirit to every town, every community. A place where everyone feels welcomed." John nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "I will always stand by you, Emily. Stories like yours deserve to be shared far and wide." As the lights in the diner dimmed for the night, Emily stepped outside, gazing up at the star-filled sky. A gentle breeze swept past her, carrying with it a sense of calm and hope. She whispered softly, as if reminding herself, "This journey is just beginning, and I will continue writing its next chapters, with kindness and unwavering belief." Emily's story isn't just about a diner. It's a story of kindness, unity, and the transformative power of faith. No matter what challenges life throws at you, remember that it's kindness and courage that can change everything. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications to discover more inspiring stories with us. Who knows, the next story we share might be yours. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.